Hello everyone, in this video I'd like to talk about something that has been on my mind for a while. Why I think scoring things out of 10 is rather pointless and only causes confusion. Answer me this, does this sound familiar? You and your friends leave the cinema having just seen a film. As you walk out the cinema, you ask each other to score the film on a scale of 0 to 10. You give the film a 9 out of 10 for instance. Your friend is surprised by that score. He tells you he thinks the film is only worth a 7 out of 10. From then on you ask each other about your chosen scores. You both begin to dissect the film and think about what worked and what didn't. What aspects of the film deserves the most praise? Where did the film fall short? Which scene seemed out of place? Was the CGI immersive or distracting? Was it well written? Are there any plot holes? Was it well acted, well structured? Then after that, one of two things usually happen. You either both agree on the overall quality of the film, or both agree to disagree after explaining to each other your opinions and perspectives. But in any case, both of these conclusions render scoring the film out of 10 in the first place absolutely useless. Whatever you and your friend scored the film out of 10 is devalued and irrelevant because you and your friend have now properly delved into the film and enunciated why it's bad or good. Of course, that's completely fine, because that's just a casual conversation. You are both just giving your scores out of 10 to simply discuss after the fact. It doesn't really matter that the scores out of 10 have been made redundant with a deep analysis of the film, because analysis of the film has been done. It doesn't matter if it's not well structured, and it's far better than just saying 6 out of 10 and nothing else. You want to know why? Because the score 6 out of 10 has a different meaning depending on the individual. What made me finally come to this realisation is when Avengers Infinity War was released in April of 2018. One of my friends from my hometown said he rated the film a 6 out of 10. Then someone else from my university also gave it a 6 out of 10. So they both gave the same score. They didn't know each other, they are completely unrelated. Anyway, when I asked the first friend about his score of 6 out of 10, he went on to say that he wasn't really keen on the film at all. He wasn't engaged by the scenes. He hated the CGI and was really distracted by the apparent floating heads of Tony, Peter and Banner in their respective metallic suits. He found the Battle of Wakanda to be mindless nonsense. When in a fit of rage, Star-Lord sabotages the plan to restrain Thanos and get the gauntlet, he said, "Fuck's sake, I have to sit through another one of these films." Overall, he found it to be average and he rated it a 6 out of 10. To which I said, how can you call it average but give it a 6 out of 10? Wouldn't 5 out of 10 be numerically, statistically average? Since it's literally the definition of the word. But this is what I'm talking about. Instead of talking about the film, we started arguing about what each score means in terms of quality. But at the end of the day, scores out of 10 have a different meaning to all of us. Not to mention that I think that if you give something a 10 out of 10, you are saying it is perfection with undeniably no negatives. But I have seriously met people who think otherwise. If we can't even agree on what 10 out of 10 means, which is equivalent to 100%, then why are we using this system at all? After the second friend gave it a 6 out of 10, I responded with, "Oh, you didn't like it then?" My mind had been fresh on the debate I had recently with the first friend. But then he responded by stating that he thinks 6 out of 10 is a good score and that he thoroughly enjoyed the film through and through, saying it was one of the best MCU films and he'd slot it in the top 5 MCU films. They both gave the same score, but their comments on Avengers Infinity War after the fact were almost polar opposites. Scoring 8 out of 10 is an arbitrary rating system. You see why it's rather useless. Now, with that being said, why would review outlets like IGN publicly proclaim a film or a game to be a certain score out of 10 when everyone will interpret that score in their own way? Also, there's so many factors at play that determines how a consumer will interpret a score out of 10, depending on their budget. How good of a score does someone have to get for someone to break the bank on purchasing it? How much free time does someone have on their hands? Have they bought a game in the past that someone gave a 9 out of 10 and they didn't enjoy it? Now, I know that review outlets like GameSpot and IGN do have actual information delving into what does and does not work before they give the final verdict. but the information that precedes the final verdict makes the final verdict itself kind of redundant and pointless. If you have just extrapolated and analysed a piece of art sufficiently, then a final score at the end is not necessary, or it shouldn't be. Not only is it redundant, but it's arbitrary and creates a dynamic of cognitive dissonance, as people don't even know what to think about a score out of 10 by a person that isn't themselves. If you're still not convinced by this thesis, let me tell you how I would interpret each score. If you disagree with me, if anyone disagrees with me, then doesn't this whole system fall apart because scores out of 10 are based on the presumption that everyone thinks in harmony and gets the exact same impression from either a 5 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10? Numbers are supposed to be mathematical, they're not based on opinions, feelings or insights. They are based on objectivity and facts. If you get a maths equation wrong, then you're wrong, the end. If we're not going to apply the same outlook on scores from 1 to 10, then what's the point in using numbers? If you want to encapsulate on why you subjectively like something, or objectively can prove a plot hole, then you only need to use words. That's what they're for. Anyway, now I'll lay out how I personally interpret scores out of 10. Scores from 0 to 3 are absolutely abysmal. If I give a piece of art that rating, I think it is next to no value. Terrible to the point where I wouldn't even feel bad for berating it, because films and games this bad are typically spawned from rushed development, no passion or conviction to make anything of quality. The only reason it might get 1 to 3 points is if some of the aspects are well executed. If the only worthy parts of the film is the fact that the camera's in focus and the sound effects are believable or something, I'll give it 1 out of 10 because at least someone is doing their job well. If a film is well shot and perhaps well acted at parts by some people, but the film is an incoherent mess as a whole, I'll give it a 3 out of 10. 4 to 5 out of 10 is either just below average or mediocre. Off the top of my head, this includes Transformers 3, Furious 7, Crackdown 3, the Halo 5 campaign and probably COD Infinite Warfare. These are the things that I think had potential to be more fruitful and entertaining than they actually were. Mediocrity in that I can watch or play them and have a reasonably good time, especially with friends, but I will never go out of my way to recommend them to anyone. They will just move to the back of my mind and I'll forget they exist indefinitely. If something is of quality and there is a lot of playmaking for what is a well-made production with clear thought and care put into it, then I will give it a score from 6 to 8. In critiquing these productions, I will point out glaring issues despite me liking the film or game. Some examples of what this might consist of: Battlefield 1, Black Ops 4, Halo 2, Just Cause 4, Destiny and Dirt 4. I would put Avengers Infinity War in this category also at around an 8 out of 10. I love the vast majority of what Avengers Infinity War has to offer, but because of its iffy CGI and its over-reliance on having things be explained in Endgame, especially when they aren't really explained in Endgame, I cannot in good conscience neglect those glaring issues that caught my attention, therefore they lose 2 points. For a film or game that deserves a solid 9 out of 10, or even a hyperbolic 10 out of 10, every single attribute in the production has to earn my complete, non-indoctrinated, objective and subjective respect and my complete undivided attention. To an extreme where I'll plug it to my friends and family because of the sheer fact that people are walking this earth not having played these games or watched these films, naively sowing the fucking planet with their obliviousness to the fact that they share the same cosmic proximity to this game or film infuriates me deeply. These consist of The Witcher 3, Wild Hunt, Titanfall 2, Bioshock 1 and 2, Neo Automata, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Reach, Forza Horizon 4, Metro 2033, Metro Exodus, Deus Ex, Human Revolution, Spyro, Reignite, Trilogy, Crash Bandicoot, Insane Trilogy, Evil Within, Max Payne 3, Red Dead Redemption, Prisoners, Nightcrawler, Falling Down 28 Days Later, The Prestige, Casino Royale, Skyfall, The Shawshank Redemption, most of Game of Thrones and most of Vikings. I regard these so highly because everything is written, shot, directed, acted incredibly well. They may lose a point for a small mishap in the logic of the plot, or if something is not looking quite right in the area of the superficial aspects such as CGI or sound effects, or if the FPS in a video game is a slight detriment to the gameplay, such as Metro Exodus. If you think that I'm implying that you need to know all of this to understand my criticisms of media in the future, then you are missing the point. I'm saying the complete opposite. I just had to break down my entire infrastructure of how my rating system would go if I rated art on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, if you as an individual disagree with how I interpret scores out of 10, then there is no point in listening to me score anything out of 10. There's no point in listening to most of your scores out of 10, because you don't know what a 4 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10, 7 or 9 out of 10 is really supposed to mean. This wouldn't pose a problem if we lived in a world where all media criticism was just numbers and stars, but that isn't the case. If a review has an actual descriptive dissection of a piece of media before the score, then that's fine, but the score is still unnecessary and redundant. People can say that you can build up an idea of what each rating means to a critic over time, so when he or she gives a 7 out of 10, you will know what it means. But that does not change the fact that the 7 out of 10 is still redundant. It may no longer cause confusion between the critic and the audience, but it is still pointless all the same. However, oftentimes the score doesn't even correspond with what was said in the review. This creates a maelstrom of confusion. It's almost like they forgot to mention something in the actual review, but they nevertheless decided to factor it in to the final verdict at the end. Whether it's due to IGN's reluctance to give a mainstream AAA game a score lower than a 7 or not, their scores don't seem to match what was said in the review. In their Infinite Warfare review, they gave the game far too many negatives to be in the category of 6 to 8 out of 10 in my opinion, but they rate the game a 7.7 out of 10 all the same. Now, this could just be my opinion and your perspective could differ from mine, but what is the point in having the scoring system at all if our views can differ so drastically? A prime example of cognitive dissonance between the review and the final verdict is in IGN's review for the new Super Mario Bros. U. As pointed out by Video Game Donkey,
see a lot of reviews where the language doesn't really align with the final verdict.
The new Super Mario Bros. Series has often felt like a watered-down, more casual attempt. It's just a shame it doesn't push the system's visual or audio capabilities. Bit of a disappointment. Numbing, generic, bubbly music. Playing with friends is still a bit of a chaotic mess. By the time Mario U really starts to do interesting things, it's over.
Damn, he fucking hates this shit. What the fuck?
What he says in the IGN review doesn't exactly align with his score, probably because he personally saw a 9.1 as a fitting score to culminate what he said in the review. But it doesn't really matter what he thinks. The review is for the gaming populace and is indicative of them purchasing the game or not. This pretty much sums up why I think scoring things out of 10 is pointless and only helps to cause confusion between everyone. I think that provided the review is actually well written, with all the points articulated clearly, there shouldn't really be a need for a score out of 10 at the end. The readers are wondering if the product is worth the asking price. By the end of the review they should have their answer already, regardless of whether there's a flashy X out of 10 displayed on screen. Thank you for watching, be sure to comment below if you vehemently disagree with me. See you next time.